Hello, and welcome to this episode of Office of the Patriot, where we try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left and rhino right. I'm your host, Myron Ybarra, and with me today is Angry Mike. How's it going, Mike?
Well, they didn't kill Trump, so that's good, I guess.
Agreed. He really needs to get tactical private security and say to hell with the Secret Service. He can, relegate them to parking lot duty. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I'm going to start today's episode with just a little short story. Last Friday, my wife and I were out enjoying a happy hour at our local watering hole with some of our close friends. Happy hour ends at 7 o'clock, and we normally all part ways. However, we decided as a group that the party should continue, so we agreed to head out to what the locals call the village for some more socializing. A few minutes before we were going to make our way to the village, a young couple comes over to our table and sits down, uninvited. Now, this is kind of weird, but not completely uncommon. And because we're a friendly group, we decided to invite them to come to the village with us. They both agreed, so we jumped into our golf carts and away we go. And yeah, I know, I got a golf cart. It's the only electric vehicle I could stomach owning. Anyway, on the way, I turn on my music, and I'm a big country music fan, and right away, the young lady starts to question my politics given my choice of music. I advise her that, yes, I am conservative. As soon as I said that, her already pinched face really began to contort. So, she said, "You don't believe in a woman's right to choose." Well, that was quick. Normally, I get the "why are you a conservative" question before any of the hardball questions are thrown my way. But that's fine. I replied, yes, I believe in a women's bodily autonomy as long as it doesn't affect another human being. Suffice to say, they hung around with us for about, 10 minutes at the village, and then they took off rather quickly. Now, in my 2 years on this channel, abortion is the one topic that I have purposely refrained from talking about. And that's because it is a very emotionally charged subject and a complex issue based on our country's current moral standards. But I believe it's more than past time to jump into the fray and, well, damn the consequences. So in this episode of Office of the Patriot, we're going to dig into, pardon the pun, abortion. Trying to figure out how I was going to approach this subject on the channel was a chief concern for me. I didn't want to make it a history lesson, but some history is necessary. And if you look at the history of abortion in the United States, it was originally based on British law. In fact, in the early 1600s, abortion law was based off English statute that made it illegal for women to give birth to stillborn children if they hadn't taken any steps to prepare for the birth. Abortion was officially outlawed in England in the 19th century, and the United States also followed suit right around the same time. The first to enact abortion law was the Connecticut legislature, with a number of states adopting similar statutes outlawing abortion shortly thereafter. At the time, federal law also put restrictions on abortion via USC Title 18, Section 1531. But it wasn't until 1967 where California passed the Therapeutic Abortion Act that turned the tables, and the United States Supreme Court passed Roe v. Wade, which allowed unrestricted abortions in the first trimester and abortions in the second and third trimester with restrictions. Then we moved to where we are today, the Dobbs decision, which, despite every leftist lunatic who conflates women's rights and bodily autonomy with abortion, we moved abortion law back to the hands of the people through their state legislatures.
Yeah, and I'll admit it, up until recently, I never really did much research on the abortion laws because, as you said, here in California, There is no unrestricted access for women to obtain an abortion. Most of the Democrat-run states have near unrestricted access. And I think we need to discuss the issue of late-term abortion. I think that's important because it's allowed in several states, all Democrat states, by the way, and the District of Columbia. So these areas are, have no state-imposed thresholds. Late-term can basically mean up until the baby is born.
Yeah, despite what the leftist lunatics and the ABC moderators claim.
Yeah. And honestly, the language used in the laws allows, for a lot of, it's a gray area. It says if the life of the mother is threatened, and that makes sense, right? But then it also says, or if her physical health is threatened. So I take issue with that language because it seems purposely vague. How do you define what that statement actually means if all it takes is for the mother to basically say something to the doctor like she feels suicidal and the abortion will help her not kill herself? So, of course, the doctor's going to say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense, right? I mean, a lot of doctors wouldn't, but there are plenty of doctors that would, especially here in California. So there's, the really fucked up thing is in some of these states, there are laws in the books, including Minnesota, where, Governor Tampon Timmy Waltz signed basically that, says that if a baby is born partially aborted and it's still alive, they have the right to just not give it any medical assistance. They can just let it die.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, go ahead.
If that abortion doesn't kill the baby and it's removed and it's breathing, then they don't have to do anything. So
yeah,
they just have to choose to let it die.
Exactly. And this, despite one of the primary tenets of being a physician, being a doctor, is that you should do no harm. I don't even understand how any doctor can reconcile doing no harm with the intentional killing of a child. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's kind of horrifying. I mean, I'm thinking if it's born and its foot is ripped off or an arm is missing, but it's still alive, then they can just let it die. There's no difference between that and murder. When Trump was, stating this during the debate, he was fact-checked by the moderators and laughed at by Kamala.
And that's one of the reasons we need to bring back humanity to this conversation. I'm not going to approach this subject by citing scientific sources that support the pro-life position. I'm going to look at the reasons why libtards and people who are pro-choice support and, in some cases, even promote abortion, and I'll counter their positions. And given that even people who believe in pro-life have different opinions as it relates to when or if an abortion is appropriate given a set of circumstances, I'm going to ask Angry Mike to respond to each one of these pro-choice positions and have him give us his position as well. Okay, one of the arguments libtards present to support their pro-choice standard is that in the 18th century, I believe, 18th century United States, abortion was not illegal and generally unregulated. They even go on to claim that it was a common practice as there were slang terms for the procedure and documented medical procedures for the practice of abortion. Okay, first, there are slang terms for murdering someone, for stealing, and for having sex with a minor, but that doesn't make it morally or ethically sound. Next, there are numerous medical procedures that have been developed and are now outlawed given the risk to the patient. So, using these metrics to support abortion is, well, silly. It reminds me of people saying, well, I've been doing X like forever, so it must be right. No, dumbass. You've been doing it wrong. Forever. The next argument is that until the baby is born, it's just a fetus. Some of these idiots actually go as far as saying that it's just tissue. And these are the heartless idiots. And you usually have a number of add-ons to this idiotic argument, such as the fetus is part of a woman's body and she should have bodily autonomy, or no one really knows when life begins. The most fucked up one, I think, is the fetus is a parasite. The same argument can be used against most liberal Democrats, but I digress. Evidently, these people didn't listen in their high school biology class. But the minute fertilization occurs, you have a unique and distinct life that has a completely different set of chromosomes than the mother and the father. And if an unborn child is a parasite, it's one that has a synergistic relationship with the mother, meaning it takes and gives to the mother, to the host. All humans have a number of bacteria and viruses that work synergistically within our body. And the fact is, we couldn't survive without some of them. If you ask your mother or your grandmother what the experience was like while carrying you or your parents, I am almost certain they're going to remember both the taking and the giving of the experience. The first time they felt a kick, the first episode of morning sickness, the first cravings, or how they felt energized right after birth.
I've had this conversation with several non-liberal women, meaning conservatives and people that are just aren't just hardcore Democrats. And they all pretty much disagree with me. I think this is wrong, and to think abortion is anything other than termination of a life, and as such, preventing that human being from a chance at living is quite heartbreaking. I think we would all agree life is a gift, and taking life is the same as murder. So does it really matter if the life being taken is aware of it? Empathy is not a human trait that can be turned off and on whenever it suits us. And if you're able to do that, then you're basically a psychopath and you should seek help.
Agreed.
Also, the Democrats have become masters at using language to manipulate their voters. And it seems to work because most young people, most women, and far too many men are emotional retards.
Didn't you call them emotards?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was trying to be a bit more civil this time and not trash them too much, but fuck it. Emotards.
Another pro-choice motto is my body, my choice. And I got to be honest with you. This one is the one that really pisses me off because the last time I checked, women could not produce asexually. And as opposed to using the typical pro-choice argument of it's not your body, it's the body of an unborn child argument, I'm going to use an analogy that I find, well, it's really simplistic yet accurate, and it fits right up my alley because I'm a car guy. So if you go buy a car, a fast car like a Corvette, and you take it to the racetrack to exploit its capabilities, there is less of a chance of you involving yourself or anybody else in an accident because of the extra safety measures that are employed at a racetrack. However, if you take your Corvette to Main Street and you find yourself a Mustang in the lane right next to you and you rip through the gears in a street race, then there is a much higher likelihood that you're going to get into an accident or maybe wind up getting a ticket from the local police department. Now, use an argument of the pro-choice libtard. Because the Corvette is yours, you should be exempt from any consequence. And we all know that's not how it works. If you're going to get a Corvette and you're going to race it, then it would behoove you to take steps to keep yourself safe. Because if you take your Corvette and you race it on the street, you have, again, a much higher likelihood of a negative consequence. If you go to the track and you use appropriate protection, it's a bit safer. But again, there are no guarantees that you're going to be completely safe. Or you can just abstain from racing. Mike?
Yep. Many women have this in common with, hardcore liberals, even if they're not liberals or they don't consider themselves to be liberals. They tend to think the fetus is not really a sentient being, but it's actually part of the mother, and as such, the mother has the right to do with as she pleases. That's what they believe. it's a separate life that's protected and nourished by the mother. That's how a lot of us look at it. And I think that's what it is. And it's a scientific fact that, the onset of pregnancy causes the genes that are responsible for causing the mother's immune system to attack foreign bodies. It causes those genes to change and basically ignore the area of the uterus that the fetus is attached to. So, yeah, technically the fetus is considered a foreign body. And, it's like the pro-abortion crowd says, oh, it's a clump of cells, like you were saying. For 269 days, it's just a clump of cells. And then on day 270, it pops out and magically becomes a baby. It's like, are you serious?
and they have the party of science. Bullshit.
Yeah.
And probably one of the most heartbreaking arguments that libtards make is the lie that if abortions are outlawed, women will get them in back alleys. They also claim that women get these type of abortions because of the shame of rape or incest. This argument kind of cracks me up because what they're saying is the exact same thing that advocates like myself have been saying about firearms. Criminals don't care about illegally acquiring firearms, just like women who really want an abortion won't care if they are illegal. They're just going to do it. However, if these mothers were offered all the alternatives to abortion by the organ harvesters of Planned Parenthood, and they were given the support and care that they deserve, the need for abortions would all but disappear. Because everyone should have been taught that two wrongs just don't make a right. Mike?
Yeah. And everyone has their own thoughts as to the morality of this subject, but I believe there should be allowances in cases of rape or incest. And if the mother's life is in jeopardy, of course. However, in the case of rape or incest, that should be very limited. So I think everybody would agree, to that, as to how it should be done exactly. It's a touchy subject, as you've said. There's always going to be cases where women, who are raped will not come forward to state it. But I also believe that abortion for anything other than, saving the mother's life should be restricted to the early second trimester at the very latest, because there's been scientific studies proving that, around the 15 or 16 week mark, the baby can feel pain, and it does feel pain. So I think, it should sadden us all to think that to terminate any life at any stage is really, really sad. But to not have any empathy towards that life when it's likely feeling, the horrific pain of being torn apart inside the womb, that's just evil in my opinion.
I agree. And as I said in the beginning, abortion is a very touchy subject, especially right now with this contentious presidential election. The Democrat left has been conflating the idea of women's rights and bodily autonomy with the right to kill an unborn child. If you're supporting the Democrat Party just because of their pro-choice stance, understand that they are using you for your vote. They have convinced impressionable and vulnerable young women that a pregnancy is nothing more than a treatable medical condition. If you want to go through with it, well, fine. But if not, there's no reason you should have to. And that can't be farther from the truth. Abortion doesn't make you strong and independent. In fact, it weakens you. It diminishes some of the things that makes women special, their compassion and their motherly instincts. Like other inherent traits, instincts can be ignored. However, how many times has ignoring your instinct proven to be the right decision? And this concludes today's episode of Office of the Patriot.
And as always, if you enjoyed this presentation, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share the channel on your social media. We would really appreciate it.
What he said. Also, please take the time to comment. Viewer engagement via comments is a major metric for channel accessibility on most social media platforms like YouTube and Rumble. The more people that like and subscribe and comment, the more this channel will come up when social and political content like this is searched for. And as always, Have a blessed day and stay safe out there.